We have already talked about Emperor Probus and his marvelous coinage on this channel. But you know what? Probus deserves more screen time here. I'm going to leave a link to my previous episode on him in the video description down below, but consider this episode as myself making a video worthy of this emperor. Today, we're delving deeper into the life and short reign of this surprisingly competent man, and we're doing a full tour of his mints. We're going to look at every single imperial mint that struck coins for Probus. We're analyzing each individual piece and see the differences between each mint. So yeah, Probus time. Let's go! When we discuss the Baroque emperors and the restoration of the empire after the dark years of the crisis of the 3rd century, we often think of Aureii and his spectacular campaigns. But since Valerian and Gallienus in the 250s, the empire was blessed with a series of very competent men in the military that helped Rome hold itself together. The contributors to the empire, the contributions by Probus himself, actually start all the way back in the reign of Valerian, when he was raised to the position of military tribune in his 20s, mind you. And the track record for this man is really impressive. He successfully defended the province of Illyria from all barbarian invasions while places like Gaul, Macedon, and the East were ravaged. He was made general under Aurelian, being sent by the emperor to retake Egypt from the Palmyrene Empire and succeeding in his task. And he was finally made supreme commander of the entire Roman East under his predecessor, Tacitus, a very important position. You want some more reasons why Probus is awesome? Of course. In his 6-year reign, he defeated 3 claimants to the position of emperor, Bonosus, Proculus, and Saturninus, defeated the Goths, getting the title Gothicus Maximus, went on a punitive campaign deep into Germania, getting him proclaimed Germanicus Maximus. He was said to be very active as well, going up and down the empire, taking an active stance on repairing the infrastructure of the lands he went to. So, all in all, records show he demonstrated a level of competence that would be comparable to the great Aurelian himself. But of course, as we can't have anything good in this world without it being ruined, the 3rd century meat grinder would also claim our dear Probus. There are 2 versions to the reason of his death. Some say it was due to a mutiny from his troops, as Probus routinely had them do harsh manual labor fixing the empire's roads whenever they were inactive, leading to their discontent, while others claim the following emperor, Carus, a Praetorian prefect under Probus, raised an army in revolt, with Probus's troops defecting to Carus, cutting short a potentially great and long reign. Numismatically, apart from the unusual diversity in bust types, lots of different legends, very curious looking reverses, we notice a trend forming in Roman coinage. You see, back in the early and high empires, Rome and a very few important administrative centers were the only places to mint gold and silver coins, with other cities requiring special and rarely given permission to strike their own precious metal coinage. Most of the time, all they could do was strike small bronze coinage for local use, really. But by the time of Probus, we see a clear dispersion of imperial mint to where they were most needed. Frontier cities were next to big concentration of troops, strategic cities which had the responsibility of providing coinage for certain areas of the empire. So as a result, during his reign, we have evidence of 9 imperial mints, located in Rome, Serdica, Siscia, Ticinum, Tripolis, Antioch, Cyzicus, Lugdunum, and even one mint we aren't sure where it was. It was in the east, but we don't know where it was. The mints were thousands of kilometers apart, resulting on coins made in very different styles, reflecting the artistic style of different zones of the empire. So for your numismatic delight, today we're going through every single one of these mints. Let's get started. And of course we start with Rome, the eternal city. The central mint of Rome has a very diverse coinage, very often showing militaristic designs, like in this example where Probus wears the military cuirass, holds his shield, and carries a spear. Notice his face, sculpted with very fine details for the type. you can find very complex designs coming from the Roman Mint, with the cuirass featuring scales and all sorts of decoration. His helmet is also full of intricacies, and you can notice the individual strands of the crest, as well as the shield always showing some sort of design. We also have some really cool letters. Virtus probi Augustus, like the manliness, the value of our Emperor Probus. Looking at the reverse, we have the Adventus, the triumphal entrance of the emperor in the city, dragging a captive by his side. Coins from the Mint of Rome can be identified typically by a letter R on the exarch, followed by some other letters. It also commonly depicts a small thunderbolt or a crescent moon. We then move to Lugdunum. This mint, located in what is modern-day Lyon in France, was very important to the empire since the time of Augustus, really. Apart from its very numerous issues, it provided coinage to the entirety of the empire's west, which included all of Hispania, Gaul, and Britain. The Mint of Lugdunum has a very unique style you won't find in any other mint. The emperor is generally shown with a rather long neck, and the bust is also very well executed with gentle features compared to the other mints, and a rather large round eye. Here in this example we see one of the normal busts, with the emperor wearing draperies over his cuirass, and the legends Imperator Caesar Probus, Pius Felix Augustus. Another peculiarity of the Lugdunum mint is a higher quality of the silvering layer put on the coins. It is very common to find Lugdunum coins with at least some good partial silvering left. On the reverse we can see this coin retains most of the layer intact. I find the reverses of Lugdunum, the designs, a little bit funny. The models of the deities or personifications have very long arms and legs, like in this rather skinny figure here. Apart from its typical style, coins of Lugdunum can be identified by the lack of any features on the exarch. Sometimes you find simple numerals that identify the officina, the workshop where the coin was struck. But like in this example here, we can't see anything. There's nothing there. Next, we go to Probus's home province, Illyria. As I mentioned previously, this province was highly militarized due to its position as a protective buffer, dividing the Italian peninsula from the barbarian frontier of the Danube and the southernmost frontiers of the Germanic tribes. The capital of Illyria, Siscia, was a major city and the main staging ground for military operations in the area, so he received a mint to pay for the troops. Siscia, style-wise, really is a mishmash. You can find all kinds of engraving styles coming from it during Probus's reign, from very finely sculpted busts like those of Rome, to small heads like we see on Ticinum, all the way to very angular heads you would typically find on Eastern mints. In this example we have here, Probus is depicted in a style very similar to the Mint of Rome, I would say, with a bust showing very soft features and this nice elaborate consular robe. We can also see the emperor holding a scepter, the symbol of power, with a nice little eagle at its tip. Very long legends for this example. Imperator Caesar Marcus Aurelius Probus Pius Felix Augustus. Celebrating Probus's military success, on the reverse we have a battle trophy, erected using the arms and armor of the fallen enemies, with 2 captives sitting down next to it, ready to be sold into slavery. To identify a coin from Siscia, we also look at the exarch. Typically we have the XXI, or 20-1 in Roman numerals, followed by a letter of the workshop, in this case a T for tertia, the third workshop. But we're not done yet with Siscia. I wanted to show you this other piece, now with the military bust. Do you notice something different compared to the other military bust I've shown previously, the one from Rome? It is in the shield. Pay attention to the shield. Now, instead of the big oval shield that would not fit entirely in the flank, we have a smaller, round shield. For many of you, this might be dismissed as just a stylistic choice and part of the engraver, but even such small details were thought out. You see, The big shield from the previous coin is the traditional scutum, the shield carried by legionaries. But here we have the parma, a shield used by cavalrymen. Before rising to prominence, Probus was part of the cavalry corps, so this coin might have been a small homage, a nudge, a little wink to his fellow cavalrymen. It's very cool to see even small details like this were part of a deliberate, well thought out propaganda machine. Heading further east, we go to Serdica, modern-day Sofia, capital of Bulgaria. Serdica was originally a Celtic settlement that was captured by the Romans and rebuilt in Roman fashion. Being somewhat close to the Danube frontier, in a defensible position, during the 3rd and 4th centuries it received a mint to provide coinage to the legions stationed close to it. Serdica is a middle ground between the more realistic style from the west and the more schematic one from the east. As we can see in this bust, it is still a nice coin made in high quality, but we see that the proportions of the bust, the exaggerated neck, and the oddly shaped beard make it clearly different from the realistic style from Rome or Lugdunum. While the obverse of Serdica might be considered mundane looking, the reverses tend to be very creative and fun. This is one of such cases. Here we have the Emperor chasing down and trampling a captive, a scene full of movement and action. It makes perfect sense for a mint located next to the border and focused on paying troops to have these fun and dynamic scenes displaying the force of the Roman war machine. The legends, Virtus Probi Augustorum, make once again reference to the manliness and soldier-like attributes of Probus. To identify a coin from Serdica, you typically have to look for a KA, the Greek numerals for 20 and 1, as well as another letter, in this case a gamma after the KA. We then finally enter the Roman East at the city of Cyzicus. Cyzicus is one of my favorite mints because it seems like from the most complex design to the simplest bust types, the engravers always wanted to add more visual elements. This results in some very visually busy coins. This example here also has the consular bust, but unlike the previous consular example, it is much fuller of elements on the robes, and the coin just gives me an image of quality, that it was well made, that effort was put into the flan. Looking at the reverse, we have the chariot of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, a very popular god amongst the soldiers. Not only Probus, but Aurelian and later on even Constantine would worship the sun god. This scene here is quite unique. The point of view is placed between the horses, and the horses are coming towards you, the observer, almost like they're about to run you over. To identify a coin from Cyzicus, you also have to look at the exarch from the reverse. Here we have the XXI, followed by the workshop letter. And on the fields, you normally find, like in this example, the letters CM or MC, an abbreviation for Cyzicus Moneta, the mint of Cyzicus. Now we go to the third largest city of the empire, Antioch. This is among some of the most common mints, issuing coins for the numerous legions at the frontier and to help the very active eastern economy to function properly. Antiochene coins are known for their sharp lines and probably one of the least realistic styles you can find for Probus. But they have their charm. I actually like some of them. In this example of a normal draped bust, we can clearly see how it's almost like his shin and his head were drawn using a ruler. Heading to the reverse, we have the Restitutor Orbis type. Likely one of the most common types for the Probus series, and initially popularized by Aurelian. This type was minted all over the empire, and the legends mean the restorer of the world. And not at all undeserved, these general emperors really saved the empire from an early collapse. The scene depicted is straightforward. We have Jupiter and the emperor facing each other. To identify a coin from Antioch, apart from the clearly distinctive style on the bust, you have to look for an XXI on the reverse. They also tend to have Greek numerals on the fields. South of Antioch, we have Tripolis. Tripolis was a new mint, established likely during Aurelian's reign to provide additional minting facilities to the coinage-hungry East. Tripolis is relatively close to Antioch, so it makes me wonder why. Couldn't they simply installed more minting workshops in Antioch? It could have been an issue of physical space. In any case, the Mint of Tripolis has, in my opinion, slightly uninspired artistry. It was an auxiliary mint with a clear function to churn out as many coins as possible, and it shows, as we can see this rather schematic Probus with a blank expression. But hey, if you want to assemble a full set of Probus, you need to put up with it and get at least one example. Looking at the reverse, we have another very common type, the Clementia Temporum, the time for clemency, time for forgiveness. Once again with the Emperor congregating with Jupiter, as he hands a globe symbolizing the world to Probus. To recognize a Tripolis coin, apart from the style, we have a KA on the exarch, and on the fields between Jupiter and Probus, there's typically a symbol or letter. In this case, we have a crescent. Now, for the next mint, we have an interesting story on the background. During the reign of Probus, the city of Antioch was taken by an usurper, a local nobleman, which I already mentioned, Saturninus. As Probus headed east to face this new enemy, obviously he had to pay for his troops, but having seized Antioch and its mint, Probus did not have a place to mint coins for his troops. So what did he do? He established a new, temporary mint to pay the troops, but we don't know where it was. That's why we call this mint Fourth Eastern Mint, a rather unimaginative name, but we just don't know where it was. Stylistically, as we can see, was very similar to Antioch in style. Very angular bust, maybe even a little bit cruder, as we can see in this example where every single feature from his face is made out of very sharp lines. Despite the ugly features, the coins have surprisingly good silvering. There are some hints as to how to distinguish between a coin struck in Antioch and one struck at this Fourth Eastern Mint. One of them has to do with the letter M on the legends. A coin from Antioch has the letter M composed of 4 disjointed straight lines, which actually make it hard to identify at first glance, while the Fourth Eastern Mint has a properly, fully formed M letter with all straight lines connected. On the reverse, we have once again the Clementia Temporum design with Jupiter and Probus. I really like this example from my collection due to the near perfect silvering left on it, and it has really sharp features. This coin must have been stashed away in a jar right after being minted, and it was left undisturbed for 2000 years. It's nothing short of a miracle in my opinion. Just like the Mint of Antioch, it uses the XXI exarch with a symbol on the field. So you have to rely on the M letter thing I mentioned earlier to identify a coin as an Eastern Mint issue instead of an Antioch coin. But hey, I left one mint, Ticinum. As I was looking at my Probus collection typeset for this episode, I realized I did not have a coin of Ticinum yet, but I can't just leave this mint without talking about it, so instead I'm going to delve into his gold coinage. I'm putting up on the screen now a normal Antoninianus of Probus alongside one of his gold coins, one of his Aureis. Yes, of course, the Aureis tends to be much more complex looking with more visual elements, but what surprises me is that there's not a lot of difference between the levels of detail of the Aureis and a normal Antoninianus. And that's not to the detriment of the Aureis, but praising the level of detail that normal everyday coinage received. Here's another example of a Ticinum minted Aureis, and just like I said, strikingly similar to a regular Antoninianus. The only obvious difference visually would be the golden color and the laurel wreath on his head instead of the radiate crown. Style-wise, the Mint of Ticinum is quite similar to Rome, although you can find quite often specimens where the bust of the emperor has an abnormally small head with somewhat angular features. I don't seem to see this very often on other mints, but it doesn't make the coinage of Ticinum necessarily ugly. It's just a small quirk that distinguishes it from Rome. where the small head seems to appear much less frequently. Tichinum also seems to have issued lots of military bust coins, so if you're looking for one to add to your collection and you're having a hard time finding one, you might end up getting an issue for Tichinum. And finally, how to identify the mint of Tichinum? Apart from the style, it uses the Latin XXI exerg mark, but you will often see the letter T somewhere. And sometimes, like in this example I'm showing, the letter I on the XXI is replaced by a T. Probus was a good guy. He was one of the best emperors you never heard anything about, probably due to his short reign. But particularly for numismatists, he is a demigod. He left us so many diverse and fun coins for us to collect. I have a soft spot for Probus. I've met quite a few collectors who also collect him, and I think you should too. Do you own a coin of Probus? Let us know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a like and subscribing. It really helps the channel. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon.